Pope Francis has said that getting an abortion is like hiring a hitman. Very interesting, Pope Francis. Pope Francis, I would like to ask you, do you remember what happened a couple of 100 years ago when you and your, not you personally, but the entity that you represent, being the Roman Catholic Church, went to South America, and the conquistadors, under the guidance and the blessing of the Pope, who is the intermediate for God, so everything the Pope says is godly and everything, all the rules that he gives are from God. Between 35 and 100 million people died. A lot of those were raped or taken as sex slaves. And as you all know, when you're raped or taken as a sex slave a couple of 100 years ago, before latex was invented, and of course latex again banned by the Catholic Church, if you put it on certain appendages on your body, stops pregnancy. But all those women, they had to go through the birth knowing that the baby had been implanted in them by a rapist. And I've actually spoken to indigenous people, real indigenous people from the Amazon, and they've said that having that burden, because obviously they don't write things and everything goes through word of mouth, which is just as good as writing, and they've said to me that having that trauma attached to you, having to go through a birth, or many people in the community having to all go through births, giving birth to something which is supposed to be sacred, but something which has been defamed by rape, which has been basically condoned under the guidance of the Catholic Church, especially with Columbus. And I would like to read a couple of things to you that Columbus said. God gives victory to those that follow him through apparent impossibility. Columbus committed genocide, he raped, he stole, and all that he thinks because he had great virtue in God. The God of the Catholic Church seems to be more of a demiurge. A demiurge is something that was put forth by the Gnostics. It's a mad God, an insane God. The demiurge God for me is something to do with the problems of the matrix and the algorithms. I think that the demiurge God is a godlike quality that has been given to something which is more like artificial intelligence. The demiurge God of the Roman Catholic Church, if it is a real God or the God, it seems very strange to me how this real God could have chosen people to represent him that carry out atrocities in his name, such as rape, murder, pillage and genocide. And then when you go forwards in time and people become more conscious of what they've done, the church then says, oh no, that was a mistake. The teachings of the church shouldn't allow you to make mistakes. If the teachings of the church allow you to make mistakes, then the teachings are incorrect, or the teachings are correct, but the God is not the real God, it's a demiurge God. And today we're going to have a look at who the Pope really is. Should we actually trust the Pope? He is a powerful person, but does his power come from God? No, his power comes from other people giving him power. The Pope doesn't have any mystical abilities like a shaman or a healer. All the shamans and healers were killed by the Catholic Church. It's probably science which has managed to contain the Catholic Church. Again, science and mysticism were linked until the Roman Catholic Church started to kill people that said that the world was round. Even the Pope, John Paul II, got a bit nervous when he saw Stephen Hawking. As you know, Stephen Hawking's a fantastic and eminent scientist, physicist, and he said to Stephen Hawking, don't study the universe because that is for God. Here you can see the Catholic Church asking people not to look or study for things that might dislodge, upset, or be against the teachings that they so wish people to abide by, not through the mind, not through intelligence, but by faith, and at that, a blind faith. What right does the Pope have to tell us how to live our lives? The Pope only has a right if you believe that he's the Pope, or if you believe that he is a representative of God. And the Pope does believe that he's a representative of God, and he does believe that he has a right to say things, as we all do, freedom of speech, but he thinks that everyone should do what he says. So who is the Pope? How many popes are there? There are 4 popes. Why don't we know about these popes? These popes branched off at other junctures or eras in the history of the Roman Catholic Church. Let's have a look at the lineup. In first place, we have Pope Francis. He is an Argentinian or an Argentine, depending on how you like to speak your English. And he came to the residency of the Vatican quite recently. In second place, we have Pope Tawadros II of Alexandria, Pope of Alexandria and Patriarch of the See of St. Mark. In third place, we have Patriarch Theodore II of Alexandria. His divine beatitude, the Pope and Patriarch of the great city of Alexandria, Libya, Pentapolis, Ethiopia, all Egypt and all Africa. Father of fathers, pastor of pastors, prelate of prelates, the 13th of the apostles and judge of their ecumen. Wow, what a title. And then in fourth place, almost in a second division, we have Peter III, Pope of the Palmarian Catholic Church. Don't you think it's a bit strange that God can't get his representatives correct? He's got 4 representatives on earth all saying that they are the Pope. To me, that sounds like a God that hasn't got his head in order or doesn't have control over this earth. And if he doesn't have control over this earth, he's losing the battle with Satan. If God is all powerful and he's losing the battle with Satan, I ask, is he as powerful as we think? You see, this is the trick with the Catholics. You see, what they do is they talk from a position of authority. If you say that you are the spokesman of God, either you are crazy or you are telling the truth. And the Catholic Church, they're playing their cards pretty damn well. Sorry the pun. They're playing their cards pretty well because it's a 50-50 and you don't know, is it true? Is it not true? The Catholics also have something called infallible law. Infallible law means anything that the Pope says is the word of God. He is the direct representative. He's like a puppet, this is a puppet, and then God is inside the puppet telling the Pope what to do and what to say. Now, I tend to think that perhaps somewhere in the history of words, maybe infallible and inflatable got confused. I'm not sure if the Pope is speaking the word of God or he is speaking hot air. Nevertheless, there are more people in the Catholic Church than any other religion. So what he's saying must obviously have a lot of weight behind it. Otherwise, we're looking at one of the greatest mind control experiments in the history of humanity. And that can't possibly be correct, can it? What is papal infallibility? Papal infallibility is dogma. What is dogma? Dogma is the teaching of the Catholic Church. That's correct. The teaching of the Catholic Church is put together by men that are somehow inspired by God. Maybe I should become a Catholic to get closer to God. Maybe that's the catch. It states that it's a dogma of the Catholic Church that states that in virtue of the promise of Jesus to Peter, the Pope is preserved from the possibility of error. When in the exercise of his office as shepherd and teacher of all Christians, in virtue of his supreme apostolic authority, he defines a doctrine concerning faith or morals to be held by the whole Church. Mr. Pope, I'd really like an explanation, if you could just spend a little bit of time writing to me on email or a Vatican headed letter paper would be really nice. If you could have a bit of gold lettering, it would be really lovely to put on my wall. And the question is, Mr. Pope, the question is this. In the Bible, it says very clearly, I believe in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill. Yet your representatives, that being the Borgia and also Pope Urban VI, both killed people, cardinals. And I was wondering if you could help me understand how it is that God says that you can't kill, but then the Pope does kill. Does that mean that the Pope is not a person and that he is God or godlike, and therefore the same rules don't apply to him, and therefore he can start to have godly rules. Is that what we're saying? Did you know they say the Emperor of Korea, North Korea, Kim Jong-un II, when he breaks wind, it smells like perfume. That is what happens when someone becomes infallible. That's what happens when someone's words become the words of truth. And yet, you know, the book of the Bible, it says very clearly, as I said, thou shalt not kill. Yet for some strange reason, it then goes on about being able to kill people. Stoning is a way of killing. It's not a way of getting high off marijuana. And the Old Testament used to like stoning quite a lot. And if you were murdering people or you were having an affair, the Bible said that through stoning, which is not smoking, it's picking up a stone and throwing it at someone, you could kill people. And I'm going to give you a couple of bits in the Bible which prove my point. For murder, Leviticus 24:17 condones murder. For idolatry is when you say that there is an other God other than the God of the Catholic Church, which I'm probably going to be accused of, is Deuteronomy 17:2-5. If you were to approach Mount Sinai while the presence of God was there, you would be killed, says Exodus 19:12-13. I don't know how you could possibly know if God is on Sinai. Maybe there's a bell that you can press, or maybe there's a speakerphone, or maybe God's light is so bright you can see him from a mile off. No idea. And if you practice necromancy or the occult, Leviticus 20:27 will send you to hell early. And blaspheming in the name of God, Leviticus 24:16. So stoning was probably the punishment for various types of sexual sin as well, as Deuteronomy 22:24 says. The related passages in Leviticus don't actually say how you should kill someone. They just say you should be put to death. If stoning was the preferred way of killing people, I don't see why a good overdose wouldn't be too bad either. Jesus never said anything about not killing people in the Bible. Jesus just said if you haven't sinned, then you can kill someone. So the pure can kill. Who's pure? Children. Children can kill, obviously. Jesus said, I didn't come here to abolish the law of Moses or the writings of the prophets. I came here in order to accomplish them. Well, this is very interesting, because if we don't know what the law of Moses is, then we don't know what Jesus is trying to accomplish. So let's have a quick look. The Mosaic law is very simple. It says that anyone can be put to death through stoning. But there has to be a trial, and there have to be two witnesses. And I believe one of the witnesses has to throw the stone as well. Going back to Francis saying that abortion is like hiring a hitman. Well, he's saying that because apparently killing is wrong. Yet it says in the Bible killing is okay for various punishments. I think it is the mark of a sadistic God and a very strange representative who may well be mad, that thinks that it's okay, or a woman must give birth to a rapist's child in spite of the trauma and psychological effects that she might have to go through, especially after the Catholic Church has killed millions of people in the witch trials. It condoned massive killings and genocides and rapes and sex slaves in Latin America. The Pope does not know what he is talking about. It is absolutely okay to have an abortion if you have been raped. And the Pope is not a woman, and I don't see how the Pope can speak for women. The Pope and his cardinals, they're not in favour of women. Otherwise, a Pope could be a woman, but a Pope can't be. It can only be a man, because it's only a man, apparently, that can listen to the word of God or be a representative of God. Even though many witches are women, and many witches or healers or shamans also speak to God, women do not have some sort of mental incapacity to be able to receive the teachings, the words, or the love of God. And I question whether the Pope should actually always be a man. And I ask that the Pope become a woman from birth, not through surgery, and I ask that the Pope stop saying these things, because the Pope does not know what he is talking about. When the Pope can get pregnant and knows perhaps what it might be like to have to give birth to a rapist's child, then I'll listen to the Pope's words a little bit more, and I think the Pope's words might have a little bit more authority in them. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked this video, please can you give me a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, please press the big red button. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.